Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Logan with West Desert Wheeler. Today I want to go through and talk about the upgrades that I've put on my SCX10 rock crawler build. Now this one, when I first got it, actually had Capra axles, so it had 4-link suspension in the front with a servo on the axle. Now I have gone back and actually switched this to the SCX10 axles, which are called the AR44s, so there are no more portals on here, as well as I switched to the 3-link suspension. Now, I didn't have the correct link set up for this truck, so I just picked up an Incision stainless steel link kit. It's got the 1/4-inch thick stainless steel links on the bottom there for a little bit lower center of gravity. Now, speaking of low center of gravity, this truck rides almost completely slammed on suspension. I've got Desert Lizard shocks. Now, traditional shocks have a standard spring on the outside, which help push that shock apart. Desert Lizards are very cool because you can actually put a spring below or above the piston inside the shock, so you can force the truck to hold the suspension up instead of trying to force it down all the time. So this truck runs a droop suspension setup, and then on the rear I've got just a little bit of spring underneath it so that it actually compresses just a little bit as I'm going up hills, because if your chassis sits completely on your axle as you start climbing hills and the truck starts hopping really bad, and it doesn't help it climb hills, so I gave it just a little bit of spring in the rear to help with that. And then of course it fully drops out, got lots of suspension travel going on back there with the Desert Lizard shocks. Pretty awesome setup, keeps the whole center of gravity nice and low, but I got it tuned and set up just right. Sometimes they stick a little bit when the truck's been sitting. But I've got it tuned just right to where I get all the articulation that I need out of this truck, yet it still holds itself down on steep inclines. Taking a look at the rear here, I actually have kind of a cut up bed that I had made for this thing, but it started falling apart. Maybe at some point I'll get it glued back together. But you can see one of the awesome features on this truck is the Rock Pirates RC rear shock towers for the SCX10 and Element trucks. These are super awesome. It gives you a ton of adjustability with the different mounting holes. I like to run mine on the lower third hole back right here, and then I added that little bit stiffer spring on the up travel just so that I still get the full articulation of this thing, and I can really enjoy all the movement of those shocks with the shock towers. Once they're leaned forward a little bit, I did have to go with a stiffer spring on the bottom because with the forward angle, it just puts more pressure onto your shocks. So I had to respring it just a bit. If you guys pick these up and you're experiencing your truck trying to roll over a little more, try and add a little more preload to your shocks, or maybe a stiffer spring in the rear. Moving up to the side of the truck, we've got these steel rock sliders from Rock Pirates RC. These fit the Power Wagon body specifically, which is why I actually went with the Power Wagon body. I originally got the sliders first and then picked up the truck body afterward. These are steel, and on the bottom, which is one of my favorite features of these, they're completely smooth. So the rocks just glide right along the bottom of this truck, not an issue at all. It's just gonna slip and slide right over the rocks. On the front leading edge, it's got a little bit of an angle upward so that if you hit a rock early, it pushes it down to the bottom and slides all the way down the side of the truck. And it's got this little trailing off feature in the rear to help it come back down off that rock before it runs into your tires. So Rock Pirates RC sliders, really awesome upgrade. Again, available for SCX10 and Element trucks. Let's pop the cab off of this thing, move it over to the side. Here you can see that I'm running a LiPo 3S shorty pack. This one's actually a 4200 pack. If I'm in an actual competition, I will drop down battery size to a 1300 milliamp that is also 3S, and that'll get a lot of the weight out of the top of the truck. The tray that I'm running this in, again, Rock Pirates RC battery tray, which bolts onto their servo winch mount up front. We'll get to that in a second. But this battery tray is awesome. This is their Gen 2 with the battery strap cutouts. So now I can secure my battery very easily. The rolled edges up here stop the battery from sliding side to side, which is nice because I've had different setups where my battery has completely come out of its tray before and is just rolling around in the body while I'm out there crawling. Getting to the transmission on this truck, I don't have a motor or ESC installed on this thing right now. But this is actually an Element Stealth X transmission. This is out of an Element truck, but they use the same bolt pattern as the axial, so I've got the standard axial skid plate on there with the Element trans. The reason I have the Element trans in here is so I can get just a little bit of overdrive to my front tires. So pretty awesome setup there. I like running just a little bit of overdrive on all my trucks. This one's set up somewhere around 11%. Not super aggressive, but definitely enough to help in certain situations. It is pretty quiet. It does run the 48 pitch gears, and typically I run a Hobbywing brushless combo in there. The receiver I've got sitting in here is a Flysky GT5. Here is my radio. These things are pretty awesome controllers for the money. You can usually pick those up on Amazon for about 60 bucks with the controller and the receiver, and then you can run multiple models off of the same controller. So all of my trucks I run with a Flysky GT5. If I run rear steer on any of my rigs, I use these dials up top because it just makes it really simple to go ahead and control the rear steer. Now, moving up forward, the front towers are just some brand that I don't even remember. It was some kind of racing brand, whatever. Picked them up at my local hobby shop just to add some strength up front, make the chassis a little more rigid, and I really like how these turned out. They're a solid product, they're just not very adjustable. Only one shock mounting position, whereas the rear Rock Pirates towers, man, you get so much adjustability. I definitely like these a lot. Now, moving on to the Rock Pirates RC servo and winch mount, which is actually kind of the main reason I'm making this video. I just got the new Reefs 299 LP servo winch, which is super awesome because it's got all the electronics built into the winch, and then all you do is just plug the servo wire into your receiver. On my Flysky, I've got a 3-position switch right here, so I will pull it back to reel the winch in. Middle is neutral, and then forward releases it. And I actually set up the speeds to be faster release and then a little bit slower winch in, so that it's a nice controlled winch. And if it starts getting in too much of a bind, I can go ahead and throw it back in neutral and not cause any issues. This winch is a shorty winch, so it fits in here sideways, which is actually a really nice feature. That way the spool ends up in the middle of the truck, pulls the servo winch directly into the middle of the truck, which is where you want it. You're not routing cables in different weird directions, which may end up pulling your truck on an angle. This is straight in line. I did have a question from Rock Pirates themselves. They asked why I installed the spool on the back instead of up front, and it's just because I wanted my servo wire going directly back towards my receiver back there. It just cleaned it up a little bit. Still nice and centered, and I still had room between my Savox monster brushless servo up here, so really liking that. I am running the Rock Pirate spacers on the servo so that I can get the servo horn on the bottom side of this tray just to barely clear where I want it, because I run my truck pretty low. Obviously you can see my tie rod is right up against the drag link, and then the panhard sits pretty close up there as well. So I wanted to get the servo lifted up and out as much as possible without having that servo arm actually hit the battery tray. So one thing I want to mention real quick is I actually messed up the little cable clamp that holds the cable on the Reef servo winch here together. I accidentally cut mine in half, so just go ahead and use pliers. Don't use wire cutters to try and crimp that thing. You'll cut right through it. It does come with a hook, it comes with a spool, and it comes with this 5-foot braided cable, which is super nice. And then the spool fits right between the servo, and then the shorty servo sits right up against the chassis rail. So a perfect design for this exact setup from Rock Pirates RC. This is what they recommend just because it works so well. Obviously you can use any servo that you want, but this winch in particular is what fits right here. So they also offer the mounts from Rock Pirates RC. They give you everything you need to make sure that the front end works out just right. So even with the aluminum towers from a different company, these bolt right into the Rock Pirates front setup there. And then you get both your servo and your winch right up front above your axle, which is where you want all your weight for climbing, as well as the battery tray. Put your battery just behind your front axle, and again, really great for doing incline climbs with your rock crawler here. So what's pretty wild is how good this truck performs despite it just being kind of a slightly modified SCX10 too. A big part of the performance comes from the Rock Pirates RC parts. These rear towers make a huge difference on your truck, whether it's Element or SCX10 based. I highly recommend these things. They are really awesome, and it gives you a ton of tunability. Rock sliders are nice and smooth. You're not going to get hung up on those. And then having the ability to add the winch up front. And you know what, even when I didn't have my winch, I actually put a little tiny battery up front here as well. And then I didn't even run the battery tray. It was just all my weight right up front over the axle. So if you're not running a winch, that's definitely an option if you wanted to do that. For wheels and tires, I've got the Proline G8 compound. These things have dual stage foams in them. I actually have slightly smaller foams in the front than I do the rear, and that is to make the front tires just a little bit softer, more pliable, so when you're lifting the front end up on a steep climb, these still get plenty of traction and grip, being a little bit softer with less weight on them as you're climbing. And then the rear are a little bit more full, and these will have a little more strength to them, and as the truck has more weight sitting on the rear when you're climbing, these will still get great bite as well. I like the G8 compound. These are starting to get broken in. Once I've broken away that leading edge, getting a better contact patch on the rocks, these things are really starting to crawl great. I'm really liking them. They're basically a Proline crawler with just a little bit of cuts going on, and I think a better sidewall for RC. But overall, guys, this Rock Pirates RC truck, really awesome, really great performance. It's a small company. I've actually wheeled with Connor from Rock Pirates RC, and Steve over there has helped me on a few of the things along the way. Great bunch of dudes. They're really awesome. I like that they are themselves RC crawlers. They're really into it, and they're bringing great products to market. They're going to have some new releases soon, so be sure to check out their website. I will be sure to link that below, as well as some affiliate links for Amazon, and then A-Main Hobbies, where you can pick up some tires and stuff like that, or the builder's kit itself. I greatly appreciate you guys watching. Drop a comment down below what you think of this truck. We'll see you guys in the next one. Keep the rubber side down.